Welcome, Tune Hein. You are a leadership guru in Denmark, maybe even in the rest of Scandinavia as well. And I am so honored and pleased that you would come on this broadcast and talk about why or how this crisis could be seen as a quantum leap. So very welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. It's my pleasure to attend here.
Yeah, it's actually my brothers who have recommended me that I look you up, because they actually really like that you are so generous at sharing updates on disruption, on leadership, on changes, on change management, and you do that with such. And I really noticed that because I've been following you for a while. You're so generous at sharing what you're finding in your books and in your talks and so on. So it's really. Just really want to acknowledge you for that and say it really works. I work with the future of leadership, and my brother said you should check Tune Hein. He's very, very good.
That's lovely to hear.
Yeah, so I'm happy I finally get to meet you. So Tune, you've been writing books about disruptions for a long time. Disruption, because we knew that this was the name of the game in this era. But this kind of disruption, the Corona crisis, that's a biggie that none of us foresee, right? So how do you see this crisis? Is this what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are that a lot of exciting things are actually happening now. I think we can go back to the old John Carter thinking about the burning platform and all that, but the crisis makes room for a lot of pushes a lot of innovation forward, and also not just product innovation, but more like innovation in our work methods and how we organize, how we perform as organizations. So I see a lot of with the organizations I work with and leaders I talk to. I see a lot of interesting things coming up now. So there's a lot to, the trick here is to capture those things and make sure you don't waste them. Make sure they're not just temporary in this moment of crisis, but that we're actually able to capture these things, these developments, and bring them into normal life after the crisis.
And could you give some examples of what could those things be?
Right. I think so. I have a rule of thumb saying that when you see something surprising, it's time to stop and think. It's time to listen. And the organizations get a lot of surprises these days, positive surprises. So, for example, the other days I was in contact with executives from different town halls. And they were amazed how efficient the virtual meetings worked. They were in a town hall, everybody's together in the same building. So you don't use virtual meetings, but they found that it was actually more efficient in many ways, which was a surprise to them. And my answer to them is, okay, you need to stop and think about that surprise and think about, can you capture some of that and bring that in to your normal life? So make sure you deploy that, you capture that and deploy it after the crisis, so don't roll back to normal. So one thing is around efficiency, that we actually, when we do more digital, we also often become more efficient. So that's one thing to look at and be mindful of and try to spot as a leader. Another example is in a hospital. There was a hospital ward moving physically to another side of the hospital, to another side of the building, and they moved that over a weekend. And the leader, the department head, he noticed, he was surprised that this was actually how come was that possible to do in just a weekend. So his saying was that normally, we would have 21 meetings just to discuss the color on the walls if we shouldn't move anything. And then he concluded, for him it would be hard to go back to the old world. And my point was, maybe you should not go back to the old world. Maybe you should be very focused here and capture what you have here in terms of more ability to execute and bring that onto the world after the crisis. So I can go on with examples. If you started with the digital side of it. So my first book on digital transformation was called Disrupt or Die. And for many organizations, that's really the name of the game today. Many organizations, they only live off their digital business model. And if you don't have a digital business model today, you need to make one really fast before you die. So that's actually the graveness of the situation right now. But again, that push to a digital business model that you have now, it's actually something that you probably would do next year anyway. So IT people would call it front loading the development. So you're just front loading a development. So if you capture that, and it will be good for you afterwards. This example with the hospital movement there, if we dig deeper into that and discuss why is that possible in a crisis, the reason why are organizations better at executing in times of crisis, the reason is that they become more simple. More simple in terms of fewer goals and more simple processes, more simple ways of organizing, and that makes everybody kind of pull together with a common goal. So that simplicity is also, I think, leaders should look for and ask themselves. Now, during this crisis, we're kind of unloading a lot of complexity, a lot of bureaucracy, and then things are working better. So can we stay this way? How can we stay this way? How can we make sure that after the crisis, we're not just taking all the complexity back, we're taking all the bureaucracy back? So that's really another key point to focus on for leaders, because there's so much potential, so much benefit hidden in right there in that ability to execute changes, strategies, just your ability to execute as an organization. And another point in talking about that is actually talking about some simplicity. And it's an interesting point is that employees, your people, actually like that. So we saw that during the financial crisis in 2008, we saw employee satisfaction was actually going up. Surprisingly, and so your people, they like a more simple organization. They like a shorter distance from what you decide to do, your strategy to your actions. So better execution. Your people actually like that. So make sure that you capture that also to get better employee engagement and better employee satisfaction. So that would be my guess, that during the crisis now we actually will see an increase in employee satisfaction because of more focused, more simple organizations. And that's also something good that we should be mindful of. We should capture and make sure we don't waste it. Another example, what we see of changes now is again, front-loading development in terms of future of work. The future of work is all that with part-timers and digital nomads and digital networks, distant leadership, and all that. And that's what we are kind of forced into now. But again, that's an organization we would anyway would expect over the next 3 to 5 years. We are accelerating that development now. So it can feel as a pressure, as a push now, but it's something it will do you good a year down the road. So make sure not to waste it, not to roll back. So agile is part of the future of work. So that's some of the examples I see organizations improving, developing now under the pressure of the crisis, but something good that we can get out of it.
And do you see leaders actually embracing this, or are they just panicking and stressing and being really afraid of what's going to happen? I mean, a lot of businesses have to fire now, and they're worried about the economic downturn and so on. Do you think that there is it your observation that leaders are actually open to discover the gifts in this, or are they busy just just dealing with catastrophe from moment to moment?
Right, and that's exactly why I think this speak here is important. This theme you are launching here is important because leaders are very busy just firefighting and handling the crisis. So it's quite important to flag this message here that while you're firefighting, you also need to just step back for a minute and take a look at the gains here that you want to drive forward in your organization. So it's something you need to be mindful of. Otherwise, you can easily miss it because they are very busy now.
Yeah. And what do you see? Are you called upon? Do leaders call upon you and say, "Well, what to do? What to do? What to do?" Is it? Do you feel a panic, or is it like going slowly and steadily? What is your observation?
It differs a lot from industry to industry. So a lot of in the public sector, a lot of leaders are just busy, but it's not life-threatening. In the private sector, it's more different. If you have the digital business model, you're running quite well. Some organizations are even performing better and better and better. And if you don't have a digital business model, you're really on a tough pressure, and it's a firefighting and full crisis. So it's hard to give a general picture. It's different from business to business.
Do you see a lot of new could come out of this? I mean, you talked about new habits at work or new ways of working. But could you also see, I mean, could this crisis also be like a good thing for us globally? I mean, now we're finding a global crisis where half of the world is at home. But could this also be like a good thing for us globally, that what's happening right now?
I think so. In some ways, so we talked about the leadership perspective, but there's another perspective also. There's a whole lot of other perspectives. So one perspective is I think on the personal side. So I think this is for all of us is a time to stop and think about our work life. So, for example, a lot of people are on a daily basis complaining that they don't have enough time to see their family. But a lot of people have too much time to see their family now. So that's something to stop and think about. So this situation, is that actually is that a bad thing that you have time with your family, or is that actually just the answer to all your prayers that you get now, right? If you sit at home and you're stressed about the noise from the kids and all that, and you're longing for your office, it's something to stop and think about. Are you actually a workaholic here? Are you addicted to your workplace and all that? And do you need to do something in your private life to make that just as interesting as your work life? So I think on a personal level, we should all stop and reflect. It's a gift, this chance to stop and reflect about those things. On a society level, there's also some new patterns here, which are actually very positive. So, for example, the way you see that the public sector is helping the private sector, and the private sector is helping the public sector. So the public sector is helping by funding a lot of the problems in the private sector. The private sector is helping by changing the production over to ethanol and the masks and all that. So suddenly. We haven't seen that before. The two sectors helping each other. It's quite unique, and it's nice. It feels nice. So I think for everybody, it's a good experience that instead of kind of having a splitting between private and public, it's actually possible to do some sensible things together. I think we see the same with our politicians here. So we used to politicians splitting, but here they are actually working together and pulling things together, and that feels nice. So it's a time to stop and reflect for our politicians that actually probably your voters like this pattern better than the old pattern. So don't go back to the splitting pattern after the crisis. Also, we could look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals from UN. I think some of the solutions we see now is actually kind of it's a way of practicing the SDG goals now. So, for example, the virtual meetings. So a lot of we don't fly anymore. Which is very good for carbon dioxide. So afterwards, we can ask ourselves, how many meetings can actually justify flying around the world? So now we get the practice, and we know that what works and what doesn't work in a virtual meeting. So half a year down the road, we should ask ourselves, is it really necessary to fly for that meeting? Now we have this experience in our baggage. So in that sense, there are some positive things also on a personal level and on a societal level that we should be mindful of and try to capture.
I really noticed that you use the word help a lot, and actually this is a very central word, because actually that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people helping each other, coming together and actually supporting each other. I mean, whether it's free meditation courses on internet, or whether it's people shopping for each other, or if it's actually governments and private sector working together. I noticed you used that word a couple of times, and that is not something we have associated with the global scene, haven't we? Before?
No, not really. So we're used to such a competitive mindset, right?
Yeah.
So it just feels better, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is something to not miss in the future, that we can actually help each other, and it feels good to witness people helping each other. It's also good to be a part of that, to receive help and also to give help.
Right, and it's which is also it's a funny thing. It's a thing in the digital transformation. Often the normal standard thinking is that if you go digital, you kind of lose relation, connection, and all that. But many digital organizations have shown that if you go digital, you actually can increase your relationship with your customers and you increase your customer satisfaction, which is a surprise to all the old organizations, because they say, okay, we need the FaceTime, that's our model and that works, and less FaceTime is less relationship, it's less customer satisfaction. But my point here is that what we're seeing now, what you just explained was it's something about community, right? So we see communities, we see small towns helping each other, support the local business life and all that. It's a community, but it's digital. So it's an interesting, it's a funny paradox that digital is increasing our sense of community now. So that's it just illustrates that point that digital is not necessarily losing relationship. Digital can be increasing relationships, and that's what increasing, driving more community, and that's what we actually see now. So it's a paradox. It's an interesting paradox that we are socially distancing, but out of that we get more community. That's nice.
That's very nice. Yeah, I noticed it with my family. We live in different countries, so we don't see each other so often. But now we Zoom once a week to take care of our old parents who can't get out.
Right.
So, but suddenly we're like the whole family, small and big ones. So it actually has brought us more together in a new way. It doesn't replace the live meetings, but I think we are discovering that actually the digital media can also be very intimate, because we sit here, just the two of us, and then the viewers, but
the rest
we
of the
actually
world.
yeah, and the rest of the world, but actually it is quite intimate, right? We have a conversation where there's no distractions from a cafe or meetings or people bursting in and out. I mean, it also has a level of intimacy, this digital world. So,
Right.
so I agree that it is not as bad as its reputation for relationships.
No, it can actually, I think it can drive, we see that in a lot of business cases, it can actually drive better relationships with customers, and now we see it with communities. And I think you're right also, it kind of also increase the frequency. I have the same pattern. I have old parents, and usually I call them once a week, but right now I call them once a day, because I know they don't see their friends and all that. So it's actually just increasing interaction. Yeah.
Yeah. So the connection, not only private public sector, but also generation wise, we're maybe building more bridges in this time, because we care a little bit more about each other, and we are concerned. How are you, and how's your health, and
Right.
we're showing more compassion and more interest in each other. I think that's a good thing as well.
And also community-wise, and in your town, in your neighborhood also.
Yeah. So you work with leaders, and you also train leaders in leadership, right? And I know that there's also a strong component of personal leadership in what you are offering people. So let me hear what your thoughts are. Do you see leaders being good at dealing with, there's a lot of talk about agile leadership, right? Do people really master this? Now we have a test, right? Do leaders actually master being agile, being cool, calm, and connected? Or do we also see a gap here, that there's something we need to train?
I definitely think we see a gap here. There are some international organizations that are good at it, are used to it, but in terms of all this future work, I see a big gap here, and a lot of training is needed, especially because Scandinavian leadership is so much relationship based. So going digital is a paradox for Scandinavian leaders. So it requires a lot of training. If you're a leader with kind of other means of leadership, if your means of leaderships are less relational based, it will be easier for you to go digital. So for Scandinavian leaders, it is a challenge, and you need a lot of practice, and that's what we get now.
So you mean if I was a leader who was just used to being an authority and could just dictate to my people, just do this, do that, it's easier to do, you can just do it in a megaphone, or
exactly.
Whether it's a megaphone or it's Zoom, it doesn't really make such a difference. But if you're used to having to inspire, to motivate, to lift, to nudge, to care for, to behold, that makes it more difficult digitally. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That requires more practice. So the whole trick is that you need to find ways to deliver your leadership digitally. So all that you're saying, you should not stop doing that. You should find ways to do that virtually. And that's a difficult challenge for many Scandinavian leaders. So that's what requires practice, not to stop doing the compassionate leadership, but find virtual ways, find ways of how can you do that in a virtual setting.
Yeah, I think that's what creativity comes in as well, because there's so many new ways we can meet. We can walk and talk. We can have new practices in digital meetings. There's so many untapped potentials in how we meet and how we use our time together in a meaningful way. So I think that I hope we will also see a lot of innovation coming out of the way we meet. Just practices like being present. Right. A lot of people report that actually, when they have a virtual meeting, people are more present because they're not, oh, I didn't forget my coffee, or they are more there.
Yeah.
So we can also take that spill that spill that over into live meetings.
Right, that's a takeaway as well. Yeah, it could be. But you're right. We need to practice and be good at and that's back to the first point we talked about, the efficiency. The social media is overflowing of people people just acknowledging, you know, how nice it is not to waste so much time in meetings. So it gives us we kind of start to evaluate the old type of meetings, and we find, Jesus, we were wasting so much time. I mean, now if we're present, if we're efficient, you know, virtually it takes 15 minutes. It would take 2 hours if it was a normal meeting with coffee and all that. So I think you're right that we're kind of evaluating the old patterns now, and that's a key point, you know, that we learn from that. We're thinking about it right now, but we're also very busy firefighting. But we need to learn from it now and capture it, so it will improve our organizations afterwards, so we don't roll back.
Yeah, and I'm also here in touch with the personal leadership of the leader, because many leaders, I guess, right now are hyper afraid of the future. They have a big responsibility to their shareholders, to their employees. The economy is looking like it, you know, some people talk about recession, some people even talk about depression. So I guess that's a very, very stressful situation for a lot of these. I know from my entrepreneurial world, it's stressful enough for small companies because they're more vulnerable. Or can be, but they can also be more flexible, of course. But how do you see the personal leadership of leaders, the leaders you are in touch with? Do they manage to keep a higher perspective, or is it difficult for them to not succumb to fear?
That's a very individual question, I think. So it's hard to say something general about that. Would be very different. But one thing you can say is your leadership is at a test now. The crisis is testing your leadership and your personal leadership. So it's a really good question. It's a good thing to look at. So am I fearful now, or am I stressed, or am I calm, focused? Do I deliver what my organization needs now, or do I deliver more stress to the organization? Do I sleep well at night, or don't I sleep at night right now? So it's a good spot to look at and learn from right now, because the crisis is testing your personal leadership. And I don't think there's a general answer. You see everything now. You see some people running around scared, and you see some people being really steady and focused and giving confidence to the organization. And you're right. It's very challenging times now. Different on a different scale, going from school teacher who should totally change your method of teaching, but you're not at risk losing your job. Going to private sector, you're at risk being laid off, or but then you have social security. Over to the entrepreneurs, that you risk simply losing your whole business and losing a lot of money, not just going down on unemployment rate, but going just losing it all. So you have different layers or different steps of economic pressure here, but most leaders experience pressure.
What is your recommendation to leaders who would like to stay calm and connected, but it's just very difficult for them? I mean, a lot of people are not really trained in that.
Right. I think an important thing for leaders is to take time for reflection. I think you should walk around the block every day. You know, your salary is, you're not paid just to process emails. You're also paid to reflect and find clever solutions, find the right roadmap forward. You pay for strategy, strategic thinking. So you should leaders, but that's general, and then it's actually it's more important now under pressure, but it's always important, and I think most leaders, they kind of transact too much. You know, it's processing this and that and running from meeting to meeting and all that. Leaders need more reflection time. And leaders need to see that as part of the job. So if you walk around the block, it's not something. It's not your free time. It's an important part of your job to reflect and get the strategy right.
Yeah, it is, and also considering, I mean, it was also under normal circumstances, so-called normal circumstances, because as you have written about, we live in the age of disruption. So forget about doing business as usual anyway, right? No 2 years are alike. I mean, I really noticed even in the entrepreneurial world, you can't compare 17, 18, 19, things have changed. So it's just different what you need to do and how you need to adapt. But looking forward, and here I would like you to talk about your insights on the future of leadership. We need to lead in a new way in the future anyway, because the old ways don't work. We agree on that, right? It's no longer the industrial age, no longer control and command, it's long gone. So what is the leadership that we need to adapt to or adopt so that we are ready for post-crisis? When we go back to work, what is the new, we might as well use this pause to reset, right? So what is the leadership that we need to employ when we come back?
I think you should answer that, Kirsten. That's exactly your field. So I can give some points, but I think that's your field of the holistic view and the future of leadership. But I think it's important to this combination of being agile and steady at the same time. So the pace of change, you know, that's an old story, is increasing every day. But it's just, you need to build a more and more agile organization. But at the same time, you need but actually it's connected. The more agile the organization is, the more stability, the more roadmap, the more course it needs from the leader. So that's your job, to increase agility in organization and increase your strategic view and communicate that to the organization. I work with some startups where I'm a partner in, and we do strategy every quarter, every 3 months we do strategy. And you know, in the old world, you know, traditional organization would do strategy every 5 years or every 3 years, but here's every 3 months instead. So it's kind of showing that. But in terms of leadership, the need for the leaders to give perspectives to the organization is just increased. So in that world of 3 months strategy, you know, it's just even more important to be the good leader. You can translate the strategy, the meaning, the purpose. Why are we doing this? What is it we believe in? It just gets more and more important the more agile you get.
Yeah. So
what's your answer?
Well, I think I think this is a great opportunity to change into the new rules of the game, and I think that the new rules of the game are about really deepening our presence as leaders. So, who are we as leaders? Are we authentic? Do we act with integrity? Are we able to see the big picture? do we have balance between what I call yin and yang qualities?
Mm.
Are we stuck in ego, or are we upgraded to essence? I think we have a lot of there's a lot of virtues to be found in ancient wisdom that we can now use for the new era, and I think that is a good time to adopt them.
Right.
And they're not that difficult, but you just have to be aware, and you just have to be aware to stop the autopilot. And the traditional driver for business is fear. It's like, oh, if we don't have enough, if we don't do more, if we don't run fast, then da 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 da.
Mm.
So I think it would be interesting to shift to a different paradigm.
Right.
Say, how can we contribute? How can we help? How can we do something that's a good deal for everybody?
That's a good way of putting it, going from fear to purpose. And I also like that about stopping the autopilot. And that's probably the headline here of this discussion. What can the crisis do for you? It can stop the autopilot, make you think, make you capture some developments that will be good for your organization afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of stopping. Is like a good punchlines to walk away with and reflect on. Tune, I've been so happy that you wanted to take this time, and I urge the viewers to really go and check out your books and your website and your blogs. And you're so productive. How do you stay so productive?
Well, I guess it's my hobby. I don't have any sales genes in my body, so I must write instead. So I do. That's my hobby: writing books and blogs and all that. So yeah, but they're welcome to look at. It's tunehein.dk.
And you're actually demonstrating. Sorry, I have this bug. You're demonstrating actually. Do you know, Hein, that you're demonstrating for me to see the new way of selling? Because the new way of selling is being generous. You share a lot. You demonstrate this. You help, you share, you're generous. And that's why, people get to know you and say, wow, it's very interesting what this guy is saying. So let me check out more. So I really think you're a very good salesperson without knowing it.
Thank you so much, Kirsten.
But you're just doing it in the new way and if you do it really from an authentic place, which I really feel that you do, even better. So I really want to acknowledge you for that, and thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom. And,
thank you so much, Kirsten. It was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So
Take
welcome.
care.
Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for enlightening us with your perspective by leaving a comment on the blog. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter so I can keep you posted on 21st century leadership trends, tips and best practices, plus give you access to more interviews with thought leaders, innovators and other inspiring pioneers. Let's also connect on social media so we can interact, dialogue and gather a big enough community of luminary leaders to make a world-changing difference and co-create a bright future for all. Thank you again for watching, and hopefully keep